Rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. We ask our Assembly Chaplain, Father Constantine Papadimos, to offer the day's prayer.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. Let us pray. Lord, computers can only give us the information we put into them. Likewise, our life will move in the direction of our most dominant thoughts. If we are constantly down on ourselves, we'll never get ahead. But if we choose to believe that you have good things in store for us, that's what we'll end up with. Help us to focus on your thoughts today, Lord, and allow our minds to be renewed. As we do, we will see your hand of blessing in every area of our life. Amen.
We ask our guests to stand and join us in the flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Feuer as he leads us in the pledge. Mr. Feuer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Wednesday, June 2nd, 2010. The Assembly met at 7 a.m. The Honorable Foyonama presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dotson Wilson at the desk.
Mr. Calderon moves and Mr. Hagman seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the Governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I request unanimous consent for Assemblymember Fletcher to have guests on the floor.
Without objection.
Also, I request unanimous consent to waive the one-day waiting period for bills amended on the floor, Assembly floor yesterday. Those would be AB 2597 by Mr. Berryhill, AB 1659 by Ms. Huber, AB 1844 by Mr. Fletcher, AB 2130 by Ms. Huber, and AB 2058 by Mr. Block.
Without objection. Members, we are ready to start with business on the daily file. If members are not down here on the floor, we are going to pass on your item. On the request of the author, we will move file item 33, AB 2230, to the inactive file. Without objection. Okay, members, we were going to do support items, but not all members are here for that. We're just going to start from the top. As I see members here in the chamber, I'm going to call your bills. File item 12, AB 1811. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1811 by Assemblymember Amiano, an act relating to controlled substances.
Mr. Amiano.
Madam Speaker and members, a gracious good morning. AB 1811 would clarify existing law to ensure that drug paraphernalia is defined as objects designed or marketed for use in ingesting or injecting unlawful controlled substances. Already, this is the intent of the law. Medical marijuana users are lawful users under Prop 215. That is without question under California law. As such, not only can patients grow, possess, and ingest marijuana under California law, they should be able to ingest marijuana in whatever manner works best and easiest for them. There have been reports in some areas of the state that law enforcement officers are threatening medical users, legal dispensaries, and others who unlawfully possess paraphernalia such as carburetors, roach clips, etc., because these items are listed as illegal items in the law. My bill would make it very clear that those who are using paraphernalia in legal ways, including bona fide medical marijuana patients, are not committing a crime simply for owning the objects necessary to use that medicine. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. The bill is supported by Rod Hoops, the San Bernardino Sheriff Coroner, the Drug Policy Alliance, the Marijuana Policy Alliance, and NORML.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Amiano moves a call. File item 22, AB 2256. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2256 by Assemblymember Huffman, an act relating to flushable products.
Mr. Huffman.
Good morning, members of the On-Time Caucus. This is a bill about products that are labeled as flushable. And when products are labeled in this way, it's very important that those claims are true, that the products have been tested and validated, because wastewater treatment operators spend huge amounts of time and money dealing with clogs, equipment failures, and yes, even sewage spills caused by products that accumulate in the system, many of these products which never should have been flushed in the first place. What happens in the wastewater treatment system matters for our environment, and whether we think about it a lot or not, it matters for our pocketbooks. And part of the problem is that there is currently no state or federal standard for flushability, and to date there hasn't been any action by state or federal agencies to define a standard for flushability in these products. This bill addresses the problem by looking to the best examples of product stewardship from the consumer product industry itself. AB 2256 codifies a report published by INDA, an industry association, which represents a group of product manufacturers who've been doing it the right way, who have been diligently testing and validating their products' flushability. INDA's report provides guidance for addressing the flushability standard based on scientifically accepted tiered testing criteria. I've been working closely with the consumer product manufacturers and will continue working with them. This bill is broadly supported by the League of Cities, the Association of California Sanitation Agencies, and various water and sanitation agencies throughout the state. And I respectfully request your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Huffman moves the call. File item 23, AB 2597. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2597 by Assemblymember Bill Berryhill, an act relating to vehicles.
Mr. Berryhill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 2597 allows motorcycle dealers to take certain disputes with manufacturers to the California New Motor Vehicle Board for arbitration, helping to reduce litigation and court caseloads. This bill does not interfere with private contracts. It simply provides a fair process for settling disputes. And the cost of arbitration is borne by the dealers and manufacturers, so there is absolutely no cost to the state. I'm willing to work with any manufacturer who will talk with us. Accordingly, I have taken amendments to narrow this bill to only multi-product line manufacturers, which has been where the primary problem has been. Currently, multi-product line manufacturers force motorcycle dealers to stock items like lawnmowers, snowmobiles, ATVs, and jet skis, whether or not they can even sell them under the threat of being denied nationally advertised rebates for their customers, essentially forcing dealers to subsidize their less desirable products. This bill would simply allow dealers to have these types of issues fairly arbitrated before the new Motor Vehicle Board. AB 2597 has received bipartisan support, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Berryhill moves the call. File item 26, AB 1659. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1659 by Assemblymember Huber, an act relating to state government.
Ms. Huber.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, members. 1659 is support. Support has received no votes. This is the policy bill implementing a sunset review process in California so that we can do long-term review of our different governmental agencies and really ask the question of whether or not they are being as efficient and effective as possible. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Support on both sides, members. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, no 0. Measure passes. File item 30, AB 1950. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1950 by Assemblymember Brownlee, an act relating to charter schools.
Ms. Brownlee.
Madam Speaker and members, this bill establishes both fiscal and academic accountability standards for charter schools that are, in my opinion, long overdue. The fiscal accountability standards proposed by this bill will ensure that charter schools receive thorough audits conducted by the same high-quality auditors that conduct school district audits, and clarify that for-profit corporations are prohibited from operating charter schools. Legislative intent is clear that charter schools were established to accomplish improved student learning. This bill establishes academic standards that will ensure charter schools are demonstrating improved student achievement compared to their neighborhood schools. Additionally, this bill creates new academic standards for renewal and ensures that charter schools that have failed to meet academic targets over the past 7 years will be closed. Further, the bill allows charter authorizers to consider during the renewal whether a charter school is serving similar student populations compared to their neighborhood schools. It also establishes new renewal timelines for all charter schools so that chartering authorities can more closely monitor the charter schools they oversee. This bill will ensure that all charter schools are of high quality, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Nastande.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just asked the members to recall that President Obama had asked the state of California and other states to actually lift the cap on charter schools, not to go backward with more hurdles, but to actually lift the cap, expand charter schools. And remember, we're all for accountability. We do want accountability. That's important in all public school systems, charter or not charter. But remember, kids at charter schools, the parents, they can take them out. They can walk away. That's the final accountability. If it's not performing well, they will leave. The parents will take them out and move them to the other school. That is the ultimate accountability measure. I ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Mr. Gaines.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in opposition to AB 1950. I am a proponent of charter schools. I don't have a problem with a charter school making a profit. I think that what we've got to remember is we're looking for efficiency in terms of how our children are being educated. But when you take a look at the model for a charter school versus a regular public school, they're already operating at half the cost. So when you take a look at the cost per pupil, why would it make any difference of the provider of the education making a profit or not? I think we got to look at models that operate more efficiently. And when you take a look at the charter school model and how effective it's been across the nation, and by the way, supported by both Republicans and Democrats, especially on the East Coast, New York City, Manhattan is a great example. We have to be looking at outside-the-box ideas on how to provide services. We ought to be using the model of charter schools for every aspect of state government in the form of public-private partnerships to provide services in a more efficient manner. So I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Mr. Norby.
Madam Speaker, this bill is part of a long, sad, and sorry parade of bills that I've seen aimed at charter schools. I don't support them, and I think we ought to at least hold our public schools accountable to the same standards we're aimed at charter schools. Parents make their choices, students make their choices. That is the ultimate form of accountability.
Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and members. A concern that I have relative to this whole issue of charter schools, and I would share with you that when I was on the Los Angeles Board of Education, our district was the first district in the state to have charter schools. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing to a certain point, but we had our first 10 schools in the LA Unified become charter schools in the state of California. The whole concept was having new ideas, having different creative approaches to education, much of what some have already shared relative to thinking out of the box, etc. But a key component of it was that it was going to be a part of the public education program. There's been a criticism, an undercurrent of criticism, sometimes above the board as well, relative to charter schools, and that they have just merely been a stalking horse for the privatization of public education. And making them possible to make a profit makes that come to life, that they in fact are a stalking horse for private education in terms of those people being able to make a profit. So this privatization effort around public schools, even if they're charter schools, I think is absolutely directing us in the wrong direction. So with this issue of accountability, I think that charter schools should be able to be looked at through the very same lens as public schools, and I would hope that they would be open to that. One of the things about the charter school movement is that because they don't have some of the same restrictions, they operate in a different manner that sometimes is beneficial to students, other times would be beneficial more to those that want to make a profit on education. So I think this bill is a reasonable bill. I think we have to hold the line relative to the privatization of charter schools. If we allow that to happen, that they can become for-profit models, then I think we have really gone in the absolute wrong direction. The purpose of private schools is to have, of charter schools is to have new ideas, creative approaches, etc. I think that has definite viability and credibility. But in terms of the purpose of becoming profit-making, I think then we have slipped off the edge. So I support this bill.
Mr. Swanson.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this bill, AB 1950. We have to keep in mind that we're talking about our children and that their education, and that we can't shortchange them or how we organize an attempt to educate them. So I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Ms. Brownlee, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to say that in our state, California has the most charter schools of any other state in the country, and they operate in the least restrictive environment. And I think that even charter operators today are begging for some accountability measures because, like most of us, we all want high-performing schools. We want high-performing charter schools. And we want to make sure that we have the tools necessary to really address schools, charter schools, traditional schools that are not performing. And this is a bill that has very modest accountability measures in it, both from a fiscal accountability and academic accountability. I think that when we're investing tax dollars into a charter enterprise, I don't think it's appropriate for them to make a profit. I can't imagine anyone thinking that our tax dollars should go and be invested to make a profit. It should be invested to ensure that our children are having the best quality education that they can possibly have. This is a modest measure around charter school accountability. Part of the Obama administration with Race to the Top was encouraging charter schools, but they were also encouraging accountability of charter schools. Everything about what the Obama administration is asking for is high-performing schools. That is the goal. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Ms. Brownlee moves the call. File item 32, AB 21.
Madam Speaker.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Calderon.
Yes, I'd like unanimous consent to return to motions and resolutions.
Without objection.
At the request of the author, I move file item 15, AB 2430 by Mr. Chesborough to the inactive file.
Clerk will note.
Also, at the request of the author, I move file item 17, AB 2186 by Mr. De Leon to the inactive file.
Clerk will note.
And then also, Madam Speaker, I rise to a point of information. All right, members, we have probably have now about 48 bills on file, which under normal circumstances we can move through rather quickly. However, we are taking up Chelsea's Law as the last measure. So in terms of how you regulate your activity on the floor, there may be some debate on that bill, although there seems to be strong support. But it's going to happen at the end, and so you will have in your hands your own fate in terms of whether we make flights or not. So I'm just letting you know for your information. Thank you.
File item 32, AB 2130. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2130 by Assemblymember Huber, an act relating to professions and vocations.
Ms. Huber.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill is support and support if amended. The Republican if amended portion is already amendments that we are planning to take on the policy committee as soon as we get over to the Senate side. It was a minor correction that we had also noticed. Please note that this bill has received no votes. This is the companion bill to 1659, which just passed off this floor. It is the implementation bill that starts setting some of those sunset dates so that we can start getting those reviews done. It has no opposition. I urge your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 48, no 0. Measure passes. File item 34, AB 2313. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2313 by Assemblymember Buchanan, an act relating to public resources.
Ms. Buchanan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The CEQA process requires that an agency determine a project's greenhouse gas emissions are significant, but there is no guidance from the State Air Resources Board with respect to the criteria for determining what level is considered significant. This uncertainty has led to legal claims that are delaying important projects throughout the state, compromising the state's efforts to achieve both the goals of AB 32 and SB 375 and to restore and maintain a sound and vibrant economy. AB 2313 is a work in progress. My goal is to bring all of the stakeholders to the table in order to find consensus as to the most appropriate threshold of significance, because it is important that in our effort to achieve our AB 32 goals, we provide some certainty and uniformity as to how lead agencies treat project greenhouse gases under CEQA. Amendments taken in the National Resources Committee remove most of the opposition to the bill. I ask for your aye vote to allow us to work with all of the stakeholders to find consensus.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Ms. Buchanan moves the call. File item 35, AB 2366. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2366 by Assemblymember Brownlee, an act relating to education finance.
Ms. Brownlee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I authored a bill last year, AB 851, to simplify revenue limit funding for school districts. I specifically wrote the bill to have no impact on state or local funding, and that was the conclusion of both the Appropriations Committees and the Department of Finance. The recession changed that. One of the simplifications involved the Meals for Needy Pupils program, where the recession has had a large impact on what had historically been a program with stable levels of participation and funding. The unintended consequence of this impact is less funding than districts expected, and that is not consistent with the fiscally neutral intent of last year's bill. This unintended loss of revenue has an effect on more than 300 school districts at the same time that those districts are dealing with cuts that we have made intentionally. AB 2366 simply delays the implementation of the Meals for Needy Pupils provisions that were enacted in AB 851 for 3 years in order to get us through the worst of the recession and allow the Meals for Needy Pupils program to return to pre-recession levels. This will not undo the simplification that we put in place last year, but only defers a part of those benefits for 3 years. I respectfully ask for your aye vote to mitigate the unintended consequences of a good policy being implemented at a bad time.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Ms. Brownlee moves the call. File item 36, AB 2483. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2483 by Assemblymember Cotto, an act relating to the Santa Clara Valley Water District.
Mr. Cotto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Members, this is a district bill
that is co-authored by most of the legislators in Santa Clara County. The bill modernizes, makes transparent, and coherent the Santa Clara Valley Water District Act. The original act, members, was written some 60 years ago in 1951. This revision act is brought about by water resource challenges resulting from population growth, periodic drought, regulatory restrictions, environmental considerations, aging infrastructure, and dwindling Bay Delta water supplies. As an example, when the initial act was adopted, there were 290,000 people in the county. Now there are over 2 million. Many of the elements of the original act are the same as in the old act. They're just presented in more coherent language with fewer redundancies and ambiguities. We've already taken any number of amendments as the bill has gone through the two policy committees. The amended bill ensures that district actions remain aligned with Proposition 218. It respects private property rights and provides an appeal process for shareholders, and I would ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Logue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I respectfully rise in opposition to this bill. Members, Proposition 218 is clear. The affected property owners who live in the special district have the right to vote on proposed tax increases that will impact them before they take effect. The courts have ruled in this case that the new groundwater charges adopted by Santa Clara Valley Water District require voter approval under 218. The district doesn't want to uphold the Constitution or adhere to the verdict on the courts. They want this legislation to pass 2483 so they can ignore Prop 218, ignore the courts, and ignore the will of the people. I stand in opposition to AB 2483. Thank you.
Mr. Berryhill.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, members, I rise in opposition to this measure because I don't believe that the legislature should be getting involved in an issue that is presently being decided by the courts. I believe that it's important that we in this legislature respect the separation of powers between the different branches of government. By the same token, we should not unilaterally be interfering with the matters before the courts. Right now, there are two lawsuits currently on appeal that challenge groundwater charges that were imposed without a vote of the people. The sponsor of AB 2483, the Santa Clara Valley Water District, is the defendant in one of these cases pending before the court. They lost that case at the trial court level. The judge in the case ruled that the taxpayer protections in Prop 218 require that voters be given the opportunity to decide for themselves at the ballot box whether to approve the proposed groundwater charges. Now that the Santa Clara Valley Water District has decided to circumvent the legal process and the will of the people in Prop 218 and seek an end run through the legislature, this is wrong and it should be rejected. And for those reasons, I respectfully ask for a no vote.
Mr. Knight. Oh, Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, let's remember that Mr. Cotto's bill is a district bill. And it's a district bill for a water agency in Santa Clara that has been doing things extremely well for many, many years. In fact, I've gotten to know the operations of the Santa Clara Valley Water District, and I regard them, frankly, as a model for the rest of the state. This bill will largely build on tools that have been in place and working for many, many years in Santa Clara, and give them the ability to move forward at a time when our water challenges are great. And we have a district in Santa Clara that is really doing everything we would ask of them in terms of integrated regional water management. They have been managing groundwater extremely well. The many challenges from groundwater contamination to overdraft, and the district supports it. Mr. Cotto's constituents, the local governments, the businesses in his district support this, and the water district itself has done amazing outreach to build that broad consensus and support. How dare we presume to second-guess this very important, forward-looking bill? I think it truly is a model for the rest of the state and something that all of us should support here this morning.
Mr. Jeffries.
Members, how dare we presume? I can't tell you how many times over the 3 years I've been on this floor that I have been lectured about utilizing this body to intervene and undermine the judicial process when the courts are currently reviewing cases at hand. We are being asked today to interfere with the process of an appeal that is underway by the proponent of this bill.
Excuse me, Mr. Jeffries. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, point of order. I just want to remind that the rules require that the debate be related to the issue involved in the bill.
Point well taken.
So one could conclude that if the proponent of the bill is involved in appeal regarding this legislation, it is very relevant to this bill. That the body needs to be reminded of that, and I encourage a no vote.
Mr. Calderon.
Again, I rise to a point of order. Whether or not any speaker in the floor believes that there's some deal or there is no deal is irrelevant to what the issues are which are presented by the direct language of the bill, and I would ask that the speakers constrain themselves to talk about the bill and not any extrinsic matters that they may believe may exist.
Point well taken. Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Cotto, you may close.
Yes, thank you, members. And I just want to reinforce what Assemblymember Huffman was saying. I too believe that this is a model for the rest of the state. They have the district has gone to great lengths to obtain as much input as necessary. They've had any number of meetings, public meetings, open meetings, discussions. We've taken a lot of amendments. We have strengthened the language as it relates to ensuring that the actions, that the district actions remain aligned with Proposition 218. Whatever court rulings or whatever decisions are made, the district, of course, will abide by the decisions of that court. This is an excellent bill. I ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Cotto moves the call. File item 38, AB 2726. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2726 by Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal, an act relating to employment development.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 2726 will help connect job seekers to good-paying jobs and lasting career pathways. This is a Connect the Dots bill. It makes sure our workforce partners talk to each other, integrate their resources, and work together to give people the best training and the best job opportunities possible. Most of our workforce development dollars are federal funds. This bill says we should spend them wisely and make them count. This bill has no opposition. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Ms. Lowenthal moves the call. File item 40, AB 1639. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1639 by Assemblymember Nava, an act relating to mortgages.
Mr. Nava.
Madam Speaker and members, today I bring you AB 1639, a bill that will create a foreclosure facilitation program following in the footsteps of at least 20 other states and local jurisdictions' alternative dispute resolution to address foreclosure. First, please note the amendments that were made to this bill as a result of hearings in both banking and judiciary committees. If a servicer has offered a borrower a loan modification or has met with the borrower face-to-face to discuss a loan modification, they would be exempt from this bill. Additionally, borrowers must demonstrate they face an actual hardship before they can enter the program. My staff has initiated conversations with credit unions, community banks, and other stakeholders to draft language that would exempt those institutions. Every borrower who has avoided foreclosure through HAMP last year, another 10 families lost their homes. Many borrowers have contacted my office, as they have yours, to tell us of the ineffective and frustrating interactions with their servicers when seeking assistance. Their stories were not about the lack of modification, but the lack of communication and clear guidance from loan servicers. This bill will address that issue by giving homeowners who may be delinquent or in the foreclosure process the ability to request mediation with their servicer. AB 1639 attempts to ensure that the homeowner and the servicer can work out a solution to the problem. The solution may not necessarily be a modification. For those borrowers with no hope to stay in their home, this process could serve to ease the blow of the foreclosure process by giving the homeowner a clear signal they need to make arrangements to leave. This bill does not compel either party to a specific result. If the sessions do not lead to a mutually acceptable solution, then the foreclosure process continues as planned. The face of this crisis is our neighbors. It's teachers, firefighters, state workers, all struggling to hang on to whatever is left of the American dream. This debate couldn't be more simple. If you believe, let me say this again because I think this is the salient point of the bill. If you believe that the banks and the servicers have done everything that they can to mitigate the disaster they've caused, then vote no. However, if you believe that borrowers are falling through the cracks, if you believe that hundreds of phone calls to your offices from desperate homeowners who want to stay in their home, then you should vote yes.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I simply wanted to note that many of us have been concerned about how this bill would impact credit unions, and last night the credit unions have decided to go neutral on the bill, and therefore I will be voting aye.
Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. We're continually trying to help out the person struggling out there in California today, and that's laudable. That's exactly what we should be trying to do. But continually here in the legislature, we are putting these extensions on. We are pushing back the inevitable on certain people. What is happening today is some people are losing their houses, and there are problems in the credit industry. But this bill will do nothing to help that. Understand that all this will do will create more time, more effort there by the people, and yet they will not get anything out of it. They will still be in the same place. Today, if you are with a banking institution and there is a workout, there is a legitimate workout, you will get it. That is happening today. And yet, these bills keep coming forward more and more that we're trying to push the envelope. I ask for a no vote.
Mr. Nilo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, it's often said that the generals in wars often fight the last war, not the current war. That is applicable to the mortgage crisis as we continue to try to battle really last year's mortgage crisis. We continue to try to address the problems of inappropriate mortgages that were entered into over the last several years leading up to the economic crisis that we're experiencing. But by and large, the problem mortgages today are just simply a result of the subsequent economic crisis, that is to say, people losing their jobs and running into trouble on their mortgages as a result of that. Now, between mid-08 and mid-09, more than 25 distinct facilitated mortgage programs have been launched in 14 different states, and to this point, there is no provable evidence that it has made any difference at all. The problem is
unemployment. The problem is jobs, and that's what this institution should be concentrating its effort on, is to try to rebuild the economy, attract employers to this state, improve the business environment in this state, and allow the business community, allow the private sector to drive the economy as it should, therefore putting people back to work, therefore generating the tax revenues that we need in order to solve our budget crisis. I recommend a no vote.
Mr. Eng.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Last year, California saw 200,000 mortgage foreclosures. There are people in your district, there are people in my district. And regardless of what caused that, they are in crisis. And predictions are that more will be experiencing that this year. Now, the HAMP program, the Home Affordable Modification Program, I believe has some very, very good points, and I think the banks are trying to make it better every day. But members, the biggest complaint that I've heard is that those that are going under do not have the opportunity for a face-to-face conversation about what they could do. And I believe that this mediation program gives them another tool to avoid foreclosure and to avoid banks losing out on what could be a revenue production for them as they so wish. So I think it's another tool that we need to give consumers. Let's give it a chance. Respectfully request an aye vote.
Mr. Norby.
I ask for a no vote, Madam Speaker. If I'd have received hundreds of calls on this problem, as the author alludes to, I'd take another look at it. If I'd have received about 10 or 20, I'd take a look at it. If I'd have received even one, I'd take a look at it. But I haven't received any, and I think for those in this situation, they can call a lot of people, they can call a lot of places for help, but the last person they would call is a legislator, because this is the last place they're going to be able to get effective help. Help is out there, but it's not from here.
Thank you. Mr. Tirico.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm amused by the arguments against this bill, that people aren't being foreclosed on, that you haven't heard about the problem. Just drive your neighborhood. The signs that said foreclosure, that means the house is going to be foreclosed. The problem with this bill isn't mediation. The problem is this bill doesn't do enough. What good is mediation if we're going to hear story after story after story that in the middle of the mediation, while you are talking to the bank, at the very same time you're talking to one person at the bank, they are foreclosing on your house with someone else from that bank. That's happening today. The real solution to this problem is taking some of the $700 billion that the federal government gave the banks, our money as taxpayers, and requiring permanent loan modifications. No one is talking about permanent loan modifications. That is the real solution. So I'm amused by people saying there's not a problem. Of course there's a problem. We have record foreclosures even today. This bill doesn't go far enough, so I'm concerned.
Mr. Tran, thank you. Mr. Tirico, Mr. Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. The underlying problem is not the foreclosure. The foreclosure issue is the symptom to a downturn in the economy and joblessness in which people cannot make their mortgage. The bottom line is this. I mean, banks and credit unions and financial institutions would not be making any money if they foreclose on homes. I mean, if there is a financial disincentive to do such a thing, that they would not do it. They will try as best as they can to save the home and working with the homeowners, or the debtor in this case, because both sides need to come out as winners. There is also an issue about this bill that we need to take a look at as far as the bureaucracy and the enlargement of government is concerned, especially in this time of budget deficits. We still don't know what type of an organization and how much it will cost when we set up this type of apparatus mediation program that's going to go statewide, and whether it's going to solve any other problems. You can have mediation until the cows come home, but if there's no resolution and there's no end game in terms of resolving the financial stress of the state and also the debtors, it's not gonna work out on either side. So I ask for a no vote on this bill.
Mr. Nava, would you like to close, sir?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's interesting to listen to the arguments because this is where you learn that denial is not just a river in Egypt. And those of you who think that there isn't a tsunami of foreclosures that's impacting your communities, well, then you must live behind those gates. And maybe it doesn't happen in some parts of the state where people are affluent, where they're wealthy, where they can afford their car payments, their house payments, their college tuition, and all the rest that goes with it. But guess what? You are a minority. You speak for very, very few people in the state of California. And so I'm speaking for the 50 families who boarded a bus in Los Angeles at midnight and rode 9 hours to the Capitol to meet with me so that they could tell me their stories, mostly in Spanish. So maybe some of you don't spend much time talking to people who only speak Spanish, who told me the stories about houses that they rented that was foreclosed out from under them, that they were faced with people knocking on their door, giving them an hour and a half to pack their belongings and to get out. And all of those people who have spent hours and hours and hours on the telephone trying to reach somebody at a financial institution that gave 2 seconds of time to them. And then when they called back, somebody different, and they'd have to start all over again. And you tell me what happens to a low-income family who doesn't have the convenience of a fax in their kitchen so they can send their financial documents to the financial institution that then loses them. For these people, they've got to go to an office somewhere and pay $1 or $2 a page to fax their financial information. Get real, ladies and gentlemen. There is a world beyond these walls where it is not as convenient as our experiences. And so when you tell me that you haven't gotten a phone call, then I'm going to say you're either not listening, your office isn't paying attention, or you live in a neighborhood where this is not a problem. But for most of the people in this state, for hundreds and thousands of people in this state, and yes, even those who are unemployed, they're struggling. And if you can say with a straight face that the financial institutions and the banks in California have conducted themselves honorably, responsibly, and with concern for their borrowers, then yeah, you go ahead and you vote no. But for everybody else who is concerned about stability in their communities, who is concerned about families who have to leave their homes, who is concerned about the impacts to children who have to watch their mothers and fathers pack cardboard boxes with their toys in the night, shove them in the back of a station wagon and drive to God knows where, then you vote yes on this bill. And for that, they will be grateful. And that will be a living, breathing example of what we can do in this building to help people who deserve our help. Vote yes.
All discussion having ceased, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Give them like 30 seconds. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Members, please vote if you desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Members, please vote if you desire to vote. Mr. Speaker moves the call. Move to file item 41, AB 1665 by Mr. Swanson. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1665 by Assemblymember Swanson, an act relating to school employees.
Mr. Swanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Over the past 20 years, confusion over the right of a school district to impose changes on their employees' schedule and work hours have led employees to file complaints with the Public Employment Relations Board. A district needs to meet its obligations, and their effort to do that, they should not conflict with the rights of an employee to know what hours they are expected to work. AB 1665 simply requires that public school employees, exclusive representatives, are given reasonable written notice of a school district's intent to make any changes that fall within the scope of the representation to an employer's working condition, including start time. Under current law, public agency employees, state employees, and trial court employees are required to have reasonable written notice when their employers make changes that fall within the scopes of representation. Amendments made in the Appropriation Committee that remove the 15-day notice requirement and added language that gives the districts flexibility to this requirement during emergency situations. Changes in work hours can have a ripple effect in the lives of working families, and a 1-hour change in the start time can impact everything from school employees' child care needs to their commute time. AB 1665 will ensure that school employees are given reasonable notice of pending changes so that they have time to make adjustments and accommodations and changes needed that the school district needs to respect. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will over the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote.
I've sent Sergeant.
Clerk will close the roll. Tally votes. Ayes 41, noes 20. Measures adopted. Mr. Calderon, for what purpose do you rise?
Well, but you know, taking the bills, that takes time. The calls are going fast.
Mr. Calderon, for what purpose?
Unanimous consent to turn to motions and resolutions.
Without objection.
Request unanimous consent to for Speaker Emeritus Bass to have her stepdaughter once again on the floor.
Without objection.
And also at the request of Ms. Bass to move item 60 to the inactive file.
Without objection. Ms. Bass? Ms. Bass, would you like to recognize your daughter, introduce your daughter to the members? All right. Mr. Bloomfield, do you have guests, visitors?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really want to welcome the students of El Camino High School up in the gallery. They're from Woodland Hills, located in my district. These students won the Academic Decathlon Championship on April 24th in Omaha, marking the school's 6th U.S. victory. The win further bolsters California's dominance in the competition. It was our state's 8th consecutive national title and its 17th since the competition began in 1982. Please join me in congratulating the students and coaches of El Camino Real. Thank you all for your hard work and dedication. Thanks, guys. Stand up, guys.
Welcome to the Capitol. Move to file item 21, AB 1987 by Ms. Ma. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1987 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to public retirement systems.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 1987 makes sensible and strong reforms to our local retirement systems by putting the brakes on pension spiking and shutting the revolving door known as double dipping. AB 1987 changes the culture of how we do pensions in the state, creating significant oversight and enforcement powers for the retirement boards and signaling that what you make is what you get. AB 1987 is one important step in restoring our public's confidence and protecting the health and security of those honest people who depend on us. AB 1987 unanimously passed out of the Assembly PERS Committee and has had no votes. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Norby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, in response to a previous bill's discussion where my linguistic abilities were challenged, I want to reassure the individual que todos mis días y todos mis noches hablo español con mi esposa, con mi corazón dulce y la dama y princesa de mi casa. And as for AB 1987, it's a very good bill, and I support it.
Mr. Norby, you're always so eloquent with everything you say. Ms. Small, would you like to close?
Muchas gracias, Mr. Norby.
Seeing here no further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 57, no 0. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 37. AB 2570, presented by Ms. Ma. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2570 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to employment.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 2570 requires the Employment Development Department to establish a licensing and registration process for professional employer organizations. These PEOs are entities that assist small and medium-sized businesses with a wide variety of human resource services, including unemployment, tax reporting, benefit acquisition, and payroll, payment, and reporting. PEOs can provide valuable benefits to both employers and employees, including enabling small and medium-sized businesses to purchase group health insurance for their employees. However, under current law, PEOs are not licensed, and the lack of licensure deprives the EDD the ability to accurately track the employees and employers who use the services of these PEOs. During these times of high unemployment, it is imperative that EDD receives all UI employer contributions, and AB 2570 brings the department a step closer to achieving this goal. This bill is sponsored by the industry and has no opposition. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 11. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 45. AB 1960, presented by Ms. Ma. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1960 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to agriculture.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, California often competes with other states throughout the country and other nations to provide fresh produce paid for by state and federal funds. Unfortunately, our farmers are not always the winners of such contracts. AB 1960 will help address this issue by encouraging the state or any of its agencies to purchase fruits, nuts, and vegetables that are produced and processed in California rather than imported whenever the cost is equal to or less than imported fruits, nuts, and vegetables. Preferring California-grown fruits, nuts, and vegetables will help ensure our farmers are getting a fair opportunity to sell their products within their home state. This, in turn, will help keep California farmers competitive and in business, which will keep jobs in California while ensuring that Californians have access to fresh, highly nutritious food products. AB 1960 is sponsored by the California Apple Commission and supported by the California Farm Bureau Federation, the California Citrus Mutual, and California Tomato Growers Association. This bill has received bipartisan support and no votes. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 57, no 0. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 42, AB 1880, presented by Mr. Fuhrer. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1810
passed temporarily. Move to file item 44, AB 1899, presented by Mr. Ng. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1899 by Assemblymember Ng, an act relating to state agencies.
Mr. Ng.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 1899 will ensure that the people of California will continue to have access to information on state departments and agencies, operations, budget, and programs, and especially state contracts valued at $5,000 or more. Currently, that information is available on the governor's existing website due to his executive order. This bill will ensure that that practice will continue after his term expires. This measure will ensure that the website will continue to reflect California's leadership in new technology by providing the public with information on how its tax dollars are being spent. The measure does not impose any new requirements. It simply puts into law the governor's existing executive orders on transparency. For these reasons, I request an aye vote. It's sponsored by Californians Aware and SEIU Local 1000.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All of those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. We've got all these absences. All those vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 19. Measures adopted. Move to file item 47, AB 2223. Move to file item 48, AB 2320 by Mr. Swanson. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2320 by Assemblymember Swanson, an act related to charter schools.
Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Speaker, AB 2320 enhances the Charter School Act of 1992 by ensuring that the charter schools better conform to the legislative intent of the Act and that charter schools populations are more reflective of their district. This bill will help ensure that charter school populations are more reflective of their district in which they serve by requiring charter schools include in their petition the means by which they will achieve a balance of low-income students, English language learners, and individuals with exceptional needs. This adds to current law, which already requires charter schools petitions to include the, quote, the means by which the charter school will achieve a racial and ethnic balance among its pupils that is reflective of the general population of the district that they're located in. Ed Code Section 47605. AB 2320 also limits the role of State Board in the charter school process by removing the ability of the state to approve charter school petitions that have been denied locally. The bill protects the charter school petition process, however, by allowing counties to approve charter school petitions that have been denied by school districts. Like you, I feel strongly that all California children deserve a quality education. Successful schools are very important, and I believe that AB 2320 gives the true stakeholders in the school district, the parents, the teachers, and the students, a more powerful role in determining charter school process, and I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Nestande.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think I just heard the author say the Ed Code already reflects there must be some type of diversity in the neighborhood and so forth. But this bill, by adding new requirements, from how I read it, I assume it would conflict with the lottery aspect of a charter school, where you bring in kids based on a lottery to ensure that there's no favoritism going into picking who goes to that charter school. So I think you'd be going backwards implementing that part of the bill. And the second part is where it talks about new professional opportunities for teachers, and I'm sure we're all for that, and we support our public school teachers and any new opportunities. But once again, the objective of schools and charter schools is for the children. What's best for the children? So that should be our primary concern, is how are we educating our kids? Are we doing the best job possible? Anything else after that is an add-on, and I think unnecessary. But if you put that in front of the needs of the kids, I think we're going backwards once again. Thank you. I urge a no vote on the bill.
Mr. Norby.
Madam Speaker, I oppose this bill. The long parade of anti-charter school bills continues, and I would ask the party that calls itself pro-choice to extend that choice to parents.
Seeing no further questions. Oh, sorry, Mr. Anderson.
You know, let's just be straight up about this issue. By the way, I rise in opposition. Charter schools are very difficult to start. They're even harder to maintain because at any point a parent can move their child back to the public schools. Let's not crush excellence with a series of bills meant to stop the charter school movement. The one bright spot in education is the fact that so many charter schools have produced excellence in California. Let's not close that glimmer of excellence by burdening charter schools and making it more difficult on them. Let's focus our attention instead on mainstream public schools that are failing our children consistently time after time. Let's unburden them and allow them to achieve excellence, as so many charter schools have. And look, I recognize that some of the charter schools have not done a superb job. They don't last long. They fall and crumble under their own weight because parents pick up and move. They move their children out and the school can't exist. We're not attacking the real problem. The real problem is our public schools, our mainstream schools, are not giving us the excellence that our children so richly deserve. I urge a no vote.
Mr. Gaines.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in opposition to AB 2320. I've had my own experience within my district where I had to try to lift up a charter application in a local school district. It failed. I went to the County Board of Education. It failed. And thank God that there was a relief valve at the state level to get the school approved. It did get approved. It's very successful. I'm talking to parents on a regular basis that love the new charter school that's available in Placer County. And when we take a look at what's happening in the LA school district, which is a mess, and I would argue that there are challenges in the Bay Area that the author represents that could use the very charter schools that could reform the education system to transform it so that we can educate our children for the coming competition that we're suffering from both China, India, and Europe. The model is not working. It's broken. I'm not seeing reform coming from the education establishment on how we're going to educate our children in the right way. The only light of hope that we have is the charter school program that's been very successful. And it hasn't been 100% successful, but I think my colleagues' comments from Southern California were accurate in that they fall under their own weight if they are not successful. I urge a no vote.
Mr. Furutani.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the concern being raised relative to all of these bills about charter schools. But I think the sport that people seem to participate in, which is kicking public education while it's down, is getting a little tiresome. We just introduced El Camino High School, which is a part of the LA Unified School District, a regular public high school, as the National Academic Decathlon Champion. The National Academic Decathlon Champion, and they've done it year after year after year, as have other high schools in the LA Unified School District. There are definite problems in the public education system, definite problems relative to charter schools. We need to sort those things out. Let's not throw, as we say in politics, the baby out with the bathwater. The issue about public education, we want the best for all of our students and all of our children. Looking at charter schools and whatever vehicle you want to use, I think is the essence of what we're trying to talk about. But we're also talking about accountability, which we demand of the public schools, we should demand of all schools. And I have to remind people, as easy as it is to attack public education, as quickly as people draw that out to talk about how bad these schools are, you ought to go to your neighborhood schools, see which ones are working, which ones aren't working, because the majority of them are working, folks. They are. That's how our kids get to higher education in the state of California. And if you want to see the best academic decathlon teams, come to the LA Unified School District, because that's where they are.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Swanson, you may close.
Yes, Madam Speaker, this is about accountability. And charter schools can't have it both ways. They can't ask for public dollars and public support and not then expect that there's a certain level of accountability. But let me just say this, that these negative statements about our public school system that have been made on this floor. My sister is a teacher in the Oakland Unified School District for 26 years. She does that because she cares about our children. It is part of her passion. And so to sit on here on this floor and try to talk negatively about our public school system and those that are doing all they can for our children when we have both of their arms tied behind their back. We don't provide them with the resources necessary. You know, we have one of the lowest per pupil expenditures in the nation. We're in a situation where we have to lay off 35,000 teachers, and then you question whether or not the system is delivering. That is a system that must deliver for our children. So let's just not get confused about the reason why all the organizations supporting this bill are supporting it. The California Teachers Association, California Federation of Teachers, California Labor Federation, because they're concerned about our kids. It's about our children. And until we have the courage to make education a real priority and put real money behind it, then how dare us question this effort that's going on in neighborhoods throughout the state of California, where they're trying to help our kids learn on fewer and fewer resources every year. So I ask you to consider this bill on its merit. It is about accountability, and I ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 23, measure passes. File item 46, AB 2058, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2058 by Assemblymember Block, an act relating to unemployment insurance and making appropriation therefore.
Mr. Block.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. AB 2058 will make it easier for unemployed Californians to access unemployment benefits while enrolled in training programs that will upgrade their job skills and increase their chances of becoming employed. I know that I speak for probably all of my colleagues when I say there's nothing more important to our constituents right now than finding a job. Unemployment in California is at a record high, 12.6% in April 2010. These jobs are not likely to be restored anytime soon. In response, unemployed workers are taking the initiative to seek job retraining and education in record numbers. Unfortunately, this is where trouble begins. In November, I visited a career center in my district and was informed by two job applicants, people who are looking for jobs and looking for training, that by getting into training programs, they were losing their unemployment benefits. Folks who are in training programs need to participate in a phone interview with EDD staff in order to get their training approved. Because of the demand at EDD right now, the record demand, it's taking 8 weeks for those phone interviews to take place. As a result, people are losing their benefits for up to 8 weeks if they engage in training programs. This is causing many who would seek retraining so they can get back in the job market to forego retraining because they fear their benefits will be lost. In response to this horrific situation, I introduced AB 2058, which does 3 things. First, it sets aside a number of job training programs that have already been approved by agencies like the Workforce Investment Act, by the Employment Training Panel, by CalWORKS, already approved programs, and says they do not have to be approved again by EDD. They will be automatically approved. That's the first group. A second group of specific job training programs that have not been approved and do not appear on one of those lists, like the ETPL training list, those jobs will require approval by EDD, but because the first set of jobs are taken off the required approval list now, it will facilitate and expedite the approval of this second group of job-related training programs. There is a third group of job training programs that are more general education programs. These will require the approval of EDD, and these types of jobs can only be funded by federal funds, not state funds. Today's unpredictable economy demands that we modernize the system of providing unemployed Californians with the benefits and training they need. We need to break down the barriers that are preventing laid-off workers from participating in training and development programs. Giving unemployed workers the ability to enroll in these programs will bolster a skilled workforce ready and able to join California's economy. This bill is co-sponsored by the California Workforce Association and the California Labor Federation. It's supported by Goodwill Industries, the California Professional Firefighters, the California Nurses Association, AFSCME, and the Community College League. Recently, the California Manufacturers Technology Association removed its opposition. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, want to rise to support this bill. Right now, the unemployment insurance is almost already bankrupt. And by passing measures we have the last couple of days, we've also let manufacturing jobs go, which is a bad thing. But we cannot have our population sit on unemployment for 2 or 3 years because they lack the training and the job skills to modernize with our economy at this point. This bill on its own has some issues, and I'm hoping to work with the author some more. And he's been very gracious to work on amendments so far to make this bill even better on the Senate side. I'd like to see some performance measures in there, but what we're trying to do is work within the federal law constraint that is much more restricted than our law here to use federal labor dollars, WIT dollars, to be able to retrain our workforce and to get them into high productivity jobs. So I thank the author, take the amendment so far. I look forward to working with him on the other side.
Ms. Harkey.
I have a question of the author and maybe even the supporter on our side of the aisle.
Without objection.
The Unemployment Insurance Fund is going to have a $27 billion negative, which is to be paid for by employers. That's how it gets reimbursed. And with our unemployment still climbing, and with this big unemployment insurance fund waiting in the wings that's still not being accounted for in any of our budget processes, it's going to be a big surprise that hits the next governor because we extended unemployment and we borrowed from the federal government to do so. How is it that we can, is there any way we can keep from tacking this on to unemployment insurance?
Yes, Ms. Harkey, the debt in the unemployment fund will only grow if we don't permit folks who are unemployed to get the retraining so they can get back in the workforce. This bill wants them to get back in the workforce as quickly as possible, thus reducing the long-run unemployment benefits paid out, being good for employers and being good for the fund, and being good, of course, for California.
Okay, I appreciate your argument. And on my own time, please. I hate to dispute this because everybody knows that people need to be retrained. The problem is this House has already been overly generous with extended unemployment benefits to the extent that we borrowed it all from the federal government. And the bill is coming due next year, at least interest on it, and we're structurally bankrupt. So another $27 billion on top of our existing holes, as much as I'd like to help, I'm afraid I'll have to either lay off this or vote no until such time as we can find out how we handle our budget problem, how we handle our deficit problem. We haven't had any meetings or talks yet, and we're, I think, 14 days from countdown. So I'm very sorry, and I appreciate the effort. I think it's probably very worthy, but unfortunately we've been too liberal in past budget negotiations and in past acceptance of federal funds that we have to pay back that we don't have the money for. Thank you very much.
Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Just a brief statement in support. As you know, the federal Obama administration is promoting training. Our own administration here in Sacramento is promoting training. This is a very common sense bill that is going to streamline the ability of unemployed workers to get trained. It's going to help get people not only trained but back to work. It's a good, sensible bill. I ask for your support.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Block, you may close.
Well, first I'd like to thank Mr. Hagman for his support on this, and we have worked together closely, and there will be a review of the results of this down the road to make sure it is, in fact, saving the state money and putting people back to work. Mr. Hagman and I request your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 48, noes 14. Measure passes. File item 47, AB 2223. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2223 by Assemblymember Nava, an act relating to wildlife.
Mr. Nava.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill will reduce the amount of toxic material released into our state wildlife areas. California's fish and wildlife resources are held in the public trust for the common good of all people, and we have an obligation to protect them. In the last several decades, the widespread recognition of harmful effects of even small amounts of lead in humans and other animals has led to the gradual elimination of lead from many of its once common uses. One of the major continuing uses of lead is in the manufacture of ammunition and lead shot for hunting and target shooting. In 1991, the federal government banned the use of lead shot in wetland areas because of the clearly demonstrated adverse effects on ducks and other wildlife. All that we're doing with this bill is prohibiting the use of lead ammunition in state wildlife areas. Ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Berryhill.
Yes, ma'am. Members, with all due respect to the author, this is before right now. It's under current review by the Fish and Game Commission, which bases the bans on things like this on scientific evidence. This simply tries to circumvent the process that is in place in California through the legislature. We should let the process work and let science rule the day. We have to remember that this eventually will curtail hunters in California, and that hunters, through their licensing, pay for much of the restoration and habitat enhancement throughout California. The last thing hunters want to do is destroy their love. They want to propagate it for future generations. So I think this bill should be held off and voted no on, and let science dictate through the Fish and Game Commission. I urge a no vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Nava, you may close.
Thank you. I understand the Fish and Game Commission is looking at this, but that's no reason why we shouldn't move forward. We have absolutely no control over the political process of the Fish and Game Commission, and I would remind those of you that are in this chamber that at one point, when there was a dispute over science and lead and condors, an outspoken commissioner was removed by the governor because of his opinion. We are not subject to that kind of influence in this chamber. With respect to the scientific proof of lead ammunition and its impact on wildlife, there is no doubt. There are dozens of peer-reviewed articles on the subject that go back at least 40 years. And with respect to the California condor, studies actually trace the isotopes from a particular ammunition to the blood of the bird. All this does is eliminate the use of toxic ammunition in those areas for which the state of California is responsible. There are still over 3 million acres in California where hunters can use the other kind of ammunition should they choose. Ask for an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Mr. Nava moves a call. File item 49, AB 2354. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2354 by Assemblymember Emmanuel Perez.
Mr. Perez.
An act relating to public health.
Mr. Perez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. The new federal health reform law provides for $15 billion and funding designed to promote prevention and wellness. AB 2354 would require the California Department of Public Health to assess federal grant opportunities related to the use of promotores, also known as community health care workers, to promote positive health behaviors and outcomes. Additionally, this bill would require the department to report on this assessment to the Fiscal and Health Policy Committees of the legislature by April 1, 2011, with recommendations for attaining and maximizing federal funding. Integrating promotores into health programs and strategies is cost-effective and is associated with improvements in access to health care, health screening behaviors, and overall health outcomes. This bill will assist California better compete for federal health care funding. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Furtani.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I just wanted to stand in support of AB 2354, this issue and approach to dealing with health care in our communities, I think really is going to be applicable, particularly in our immigrant communities where a lot of different languages are spoken. This approach, I think, really will bring the health care issue into a way that we can do it more effectively, and I really support this bill. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 20. Measure passes. File item 50, AB 2514. Passed temporarily. File item 51 passed temporarily. File item 52, AB 2592. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2592 by Assemblymember Buchanan, an act relating to early childhood education.
Ms. Buchanan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I appreciate the opportunity to present Assembly Bill 2592. Numerous studies have shown that high-quality early learning programs for children significantly narrow the achievement gap, reduce the high school dropout rate, and produce savings from lower costs in special education, welfare, and prisons by reducing crime. AB 2592 promotes high-quality early learning and future academic success by creating California's first early learning quality rating scale. The California Department of Education will be responsible for implementation based on the recommendations that are being developed by the Early Learning Quality Improvement System Advisory Committee, with extensive input from stakeholders throughout the state. AB 2592 was created in anticipation of federal funds. In order to place California in a better position to receive the Early Learning Challenge Fund and other new federal early learning funds, we need to codify the quality rating scale. We do not want to see California in the same place we were in with Race to the Top. By codifying the QRS now, California is taking the necessary steps to ensure that we are in good place to receive Early Learning Challenge Fund funding. 21 states already have a quality rating scale, and we need to make progress now to catch up. The quality rating scale will be developed with grant funds requiring no general fund expenditures. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote.
See, I'm not going to vote. I'm in.
Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 20. Measure passes.
You should reward and incentivize.
Please note, for those who are waiting for Chelsea's Law to come up, Chelsea's Law will not be presented until after Speaker Perez comes back to the floor around 11:30. File item 53, AB 2620. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 2620 by Assemblymember Eng, an act relating to transportation.
Mr. Eng.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. California's highway system is the bridge to nowhere. Our highway system is in crisis. A recent report shows that drivers in California pay an extra about $600 in car repairs every year due to highway and bridge disrepair. 76% members of California's major roads are judged to be in less than acceptable condition. A startling 13% members of California's bridges are deemed to be, quote, structurally deficient by engineers. Almost 3,300 in total at last count. Funding for states, our California Primary Maintenance Program, the State Highway Operation and Protection Program, emphasis on the word protection, or the SHOP program, is in steep decline. The state needs $63 billion over the next 10 years to effectively maintain and rehabilitate our state highways. You know that. You've been on many of them very recently, I'm sure. Now, what about the federal government? SHOP is expected to receive $15 billion in funding. That's only about 25% of the total that we need. So, members, when local transportation entities enact toll lanes, motorists pay millions of dollars to use the California state highway system. It's only fair and equitable that these facilities consider providing a portion of their revenues to maintain and repair this most valuable asset. AB 2620 would allow state highway projects to receive up to 0 or up to 15% of net toll revenues when local transportation entities partner with Caltrans to use state highways for relief of traffic congestion. For example, members, consider the Highway 5 in Los Angeles, $17 million to update the median to reduce collisions. That came out of this SHOP fund. Or the $5 million project on Highway 168 in Fresno to realign a curve in the highway to prevent collisions. That's another fine example of where our tax dollars are used. This measure will bring sorely needed funds to help repair our biggest asset, our state highway system. The bill, members, does not add any new hurdles. Does it suggest any additional delay in the vital partnership agreements that occur when local entities work with Caltrans to seek authorization for toll lanes? Finally, members, all money collected will stay in the transportation corridor so that those that pay will receive the benefit.
Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in support of this measure. I'd like to just kind of follow up what my good friend and esteemed colleague, Assemblymember Mike King, mentioned with regard to the SHOP program. And of course, we know that's the State Highway Operation and Protection Program. And it's common sense that premise that this particular program, especially in this light of what Mike had said with regard to its losing or doesn't have enough money, that it should benefit if state highway assets are converted into revenue-producing toll facilities. This bill does not mandate a percentage of toll revenues and that must go to the SHOP. It simply states that when Caltrans and a regional transportation agency enter into a cooperative agreement to establish a toll facility, they must decide upon a percentage of the revenue to go to SHOP, thereby giving the Caltrans and the public agency the flexibility to determine what percentage is appropriate for each project. The reason why I stand in support is because I have a project in my district. It's the 10605 freeway that is notorious and has the absolute worst record for wrecks in that particular interchange. It was in great need of some money, and the SHOP program is going to be able to fund it, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the author's work and commitment that he's given to transportation projects up and down our state. However, I think that this bill goes a little bit too far in trying to increase tolls. Ultimately, this will increase tolls in order to fund the SHOP program. There's no dispute that the SHOP program has been effective and we need it. However, there are complicated financial modeling formulas out there that make the toll roads work. The projects that go out to the private sector and the bondholders need to make sure that the financial formulas make sense. Otherwise, they will not be able to finance the projects. Specifically, in Riverside County, we have a bill that will be coming to us on the 91 freeway. This project is already through the environmental clearance. It's already designed. It doesn't need CEQA. We can start building it next year. It will generate 20,000 jobs, and the financial bonding has already been decided upon. And this would complicate the matter and add an additional cost that may make it unfeasible. And so I would be very, very concerned to move this forward, specifically until this is decided. Also in Orange County, another area that I represent, has a sophisticated and complicated and effective toll road network. and I would be concerned that any additional toll roads that are added to the network or any additional tolls increased would make it very complicated and unaffordable for the Orange County people that I represent. I strongly urge a no vote.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I supported this bill in my committee in part out of my confidence in the author, who was the former chair of transportation, but also because there is a solid